Uh, we are starting our trigonometry unit today, and we need to be able to label a right triangle um, in order to do everything in this unit. So there's some parts to the triangle that we'll get into a little bit more specifically in a few minutes, but we are going to give names to the sides of the right triangle with respect to the reference angle, the given angle that we're working with. So before we get to the reference angle, if we take a look at this, I actually am going to start with our third one here because there's three words. There's the opposite, there's the adjacent, and there's the hypotenuse. We at least are familiar with the hypotenuse. It is the side across from the right angle. So if we look at this, then this is going to be the second definition there. So we look for the box in the right triangle, and then we can go across from that. And we'll see that in our examples here momentarily. It works the same way with the opposite. So the opposite, we look across from the opposite. For those of you who did do level 3, with the isosceles triangle, it was really important to be able to identify the across part. But the side across from the reference angle is our opposite, which means that the side next to or touching the reference angle is the adjacent. So there's our pieces. So let's take a moment here because sometimes words don't do much. So if we look at this picture here, and I think I lost one of the pictures. There we go. So first of all, the reference angle is oftentimes referred to with this symbol here. It's a Greek letter called theta, which is spelled out there in the box, and it just oftentimes represents an angle in a triangle. So if we start with this triangle farthest to the left here, I'm going to put theta, which I usually make as a cursive O, in the corner of that triangle. But what we see is we see a right angle. So if we draw a line across from the right angle, that's the hypotenuse. And I will abbreviate that as HYP. Some people will even take it down to H. So I always label the hypotenuse first. And then the next one is the opposite. Going across from our angle, also known as the reference angle, going across is the opposite, which means that this third side of our triangle is the adjacent, which I will abbreviate as ADJ. Now the thing is, we could look at the other angle, like putting the theta here, but when we identify the different parts of this right triangle, start with the hypotenuse. That's the one we're familiar with. That's probably the easiest one to identify, but across from the box is the hypotenuse. And then across from the reference angle is our opposite, which means that the third side is adjacent. So as we filled those two in there, what's really, really important to notice is that you label the triangle based on the angle. So down here, when we answer our next question, it's based on the reference angle. That's what we really need to do. So example number one, which doesn't have a number by it, but if you look at the right of our examples down here, we're just labeling the opposite, the adjacent, and the hypotenuse. Again, start with the right angle. Here's the hypotenuse. Our theta, already in one angle of our triangle, going across from there is the opposite. Which means that our third side is the adjacent. So then, if we look at this problem below the one that we just did, where we have triangle X, Y, Z, first and foremost, identify the right angle and look across. Here's our hypotenuse. Then identify theta, our reference angle, and we can go across from there. You don't necessarily need to draw the line, but since this is the first time that you've ever done this, it might be helpful. And then our third side, consequently, is the adjacent. The adjacent side touches the reference angle. Again, identify the right angle. Here's our right angle. Here's the hypotenuse. Find the reference angle. Here's our opposite, which means that our third side is the adjacent. And lastly, right angle. Across from the right angle is the hypotenuse. Across from theta, that is the Greek letter that represents an angle. There's the opposite. And that means that our third side, the side that touches the reference angle, is the adjacent.